Part 19. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 181. Chapter 181. Don't blame me for not reminding you. Guoqing was frightened and took 2 steps back behind Mr. Guo. What more evidence do you need? Your valley is the evidence. I asked someone and it cost more than 1,000 taels of silver to build the valley. You are a bunch of mud-legged people who are running away from famine. You are lucky to be hungry. Where can you get the money to build the valley? It's hard to say that you just robbed my brother and his friends of their money. You only got the good life today by eating human blood steamed buns and stepping on my brother and his friends' lives. Li Lao turned back to the house, took the account book, and slapped it on the table. Back then, we did get a few bags of grain and more than 200 taels of silver from the bandits' den. But this money does not necessarily belong to your Guo family. Moreover, we preserved your Guo family's book collection and buried 10 members of the Guo family. Cow, even if the food and money belong to the Guo family, it's reasonable for us to tell you. That's the reward we deserve. Speaking of the construction of the hot spring valley, more than 1,000 taels were used. Except for these 200 taels, the rest were collected with the help of Mrs. Kui and the Marquis. All the incoming and outgoing accounts are here. If you don't believe me, you can check it. Hearing Li Lao carry out the Marquis and Mrs. Kui, Guoqing restrained himself a little, but still argued with a stiff neck, "This is your account, of course you can write it down however you want. The Marquis and Mrs. Kui also, we are all your own people, so of course we have to speak to you. Okay, tell me, what do you want to do? Go to the government office to reason? Let's go, we will stay with you until the end." Li Lao was also annoyed and wanted to drag Guoqing out. The villagers also shouted, "Yes, go to the government office, you really can't file a complaint. I don't believe it, there is no room for reason in the world. If you save someone wrong, who will dare to do good deeds in the future?" Guoqing was a little scared. He avoided Li Lao's pull and shouted, "There's no need to go to the government office. No one has evidence and no one can explain it. It's easy to solve this matter. You took our Guo family's money. If you build a hot spring villa, then just pay the villa to our family." Everyone was suddenly enlightened after hearing this, and their faces were full of contempt. The pursuit of justice and peace of mind are just jealous of their cornucopia and they come to fight for it. Even Mr. Lu was extremely disappointed. He looked at Mr. Guo and said, "Shan Chief, do you also think that everyone killed your children and grandchildren and took the money? Now that they have built this hot spring village, it should be returned to your Guo family." Mr. Guo's eyes were red and dull, and 2 lines of tears suddenly flowed down. "I just want to know how all the children and grandchildren of our Guo family died. Were they killed by bandits, or were they just being wronged? As for the villa, everyone is dead, so what use do I need? No, uncle, it's useless for you to ask for it. You can give it to Wen Hao. Wen Hao's parents are gone, and he has many properties. At least he will have no worries about food and clothing in the future." Guoqing was afraid that the old gentleman would regret it, so he came closer and hurriedly tried to persuade him. Li Laozi and Lu Biatu, as well as the village chief and Mrs. Kui, looked at each other and nodded with complicated expressions. Li Laozi walked to the door and shouted, "Brothers who went to kill the bandits, all come in." Immediately, more than 20 young men crowded into the room. Wu Laosan and sister-in-law Qiang also moved silently and stood at the front. Li Laozi glanced at Mr. Guo, with a bit of pity in his eyes, but more of annoyance. "We were originally soft-hearted and didn't want the Guo family to be too sad, so we hid some details. But since the old gentleman is suspicious, we won't do such unnecessary things." He pointed at Wu Laosan and sister-in-law Qiang, and said, "We went there because the bandits kidnapped the child. One of these 2 is the child's father, and the other is Mrs. Kui's personal servant. They both witnessed it that day. Let the people you meet tell them clearly first. After that, he stepped aside. Sister-in-law Kyan was okay, but Wu Lao-san was angry and didn't care so much. He started to curse, "You Guo family are really heartless. Do you read everything into the stomach of a dog? It's a shame for us back then. I tried my best to kill the bandits, but I wasted so much energy digging a hole to bury your Guo family." He turned red with anger and started talking loudly. From discovering that the child was missing, to sending a message to the bandits, and then to visiting the village, everyone was very nervous after listening carefully. Until I mentioned that the men of the Guo family were stripped naked and hung on the tree, frozen into popsicles. Mr. Guo couldn't help it anymore. His face turned pale and he murmured, "No, no." Li Lao sneered in his heart and urged, "Keep talking." Sister-in-law Kyan opened her mouth and told her how to jump into the yard and poison her. Li Laozi then talked about scratching his tongue and asking questions. He went to the cellar to save the children first. I went down to the cellar and lit a fire. The first thing I saw was 4 children hugging each other. They had been frozen to death for a long time. Green and black. Go Shenger was also feverish, so I hugged him and went up first. Lu Biatu also stood up. The bandits in the main room were the leaders. They were not poisoned. They came out and found us at this time and beat us in one place. Me, Lao Si, and Ji Lu Yang, even Uncle Wu tried his best to kill them. They thought there was no one in the house, but Ji Yi and Lu Yang went to the next door and found 4 women, all still alive. He paused for a moment and looked at Mr. Guo with complicated eyes. Mr. Guo suddenly felt a thump in his heart, as if something was telling him that he could no longer listen. But Guo Qing thought he had caught the clue and shouted, "It must be my sisters-in-law. Are they all alive? What about them, were they killed by you?" But Lu Biatu shook his head and said word by word, "They are alive, but their clothes are not covering their bodies, and they have been abused by the bandits day and night for many days, and they are no longer conscious. When they saw us, they thought we were also bandits, so they kept kowtow and beg. They can sacrifice their bodies, but they want us to let go of the children who have frozen to death. Having no clothes on? How many days of humiliation!" Mr. Guo seemed to have something exploded in his head, which made him roll his eyes and fainted. Guo Qing was frightened and quickly helped the old man, shouting, "Where's the doctor? Help him. It's a pity that the old miracle Dr. Zhang is still sitting drinking tea and doesn't want to move at all. I am a doctor, but I only save people, not white-eyed wolves." Hearing the good news, I wanted to clap my hands for the old man. What he said was so good. Although Mr. Guo did not accuse anyone just now, he suspected that they had killed his children and grandchildren. It's so chilling. At this time, it would be nice not to add insult to injury and ridicule him. Who would bother about his life and death? After all, it was Mr. Lu who felt a little sympathy in his heart, so he reached out and pinched the old man's middle. Mr. Guo woke up leisurely, tears flowing like springs. "No way, it can't be like this." Captain Lu did not stop but continued, "We are all men and it is difficult to come forward," so sister-in-law Kyan comforted them and carried the frozen child into the house. We were busy dealing with the body of the bandit when we suddenly discovered the door was closed and we knocked on the door, but the women were already hanging. When Guo Qing heard this, his expression actually showed a bit of joy. Even Mr. Guo seemed to be relieved. Mr. Lu saw this and was silent for a moment before completely retreating to the side. 3 more people are at least 9 level wind outside the window. It is so scary. I actually broke the internet. Finally, I caught up with the update. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 182. Chapter 182. Kneel down and apologize. Everyone is not blind, so they can naturally see the expressions of these two gentlemen clearly. Except for the children, everyone, men, women and children were surprised, and in turn, they despised the Guo family. Those women were all the daughters-in-law or daughters of the Guo family. When such a tragedy happened, outsiders like them felt sympathy and felt sorry for them. They wished they could avenge them, or they regretted that they had been negligent and did not save them. As a result, Mr. Guo and Guo Qing, their two relatives, despised them for being raped by bandits and destroying their innocence and chastity. Not only did I not feel sad about their suicide, I was actually relieved. No wonder those women hanged themselves so simply. Perhaps they knew better that even if they survived, they would not be able to return home. Ji Yin's heart felt cold, and she hugged old Mrs. Li's thigh tightly. Old Mrs. Li quickly put her granddaughter in her arms, patted her granddaughter's back gently with her big hands, and whispered comforting, "Don't be afraid, Fu Niu, you must live on at any time. Only by living can you take revenge and live a better life." Ji Yin hugged her grandma's neck and said nothing, feeling extremely happy in her heart. If she suffered such a tragic incident, her grandmother, parents, and family would definitely not be so heart-wrenching. Mr. Lu and his son looked at each other and shook their heads slightly. Lu's Haihang understood that his family would not get too close to the Guo family in the future, and it was just a matter of friendship. Such a family is so cruel to their own family, and their reputation is more important than the lives of their daughter-in-law and daughter. Then who can expect to get sincerity from them? Every time someone slaughters a dog in a righteous manner, he or she is a scholar with a negative heart. What happened today is vividly reflected. The Xincan people who were born as refugees are kind, brave, enthusiastic and upright. The Guo family, which has a century-old scholarly family background, is so shameless and ruthless. Perhaps feeling the bad looks from everyone, Mr. Guo coughed twice and pretended to wipe his eyes twice. Guo Qing immediately shouted, "What about the collection of books? What do you think? That is the treasure of Taiwan Academy. My eldest brother and the others will keep it with them at all times. How did it get into your hands?" Captain Lu glanced at him coldly and replied, "After killing the bandits and burying the Guo family, we were afraid that the bandits might have accomplices, so I took 2 boys and stayed near the bandits' den for 2 days. Yes, Ji Yi and I were walking around with my father. There are only 2 mountains away from the official road outside the mountain. We wanted to see what was going on outside and whether there were any barbarians." It was Lu Yang who took the lead. Maybe he was tired from work, or maybe it was time to draw the note. He had lost a lot of weight, but he had also grown taller. Now he was standing with Ji Yi, looking very angry. After all, they were trying their best to kill the bandits back then and were all injured. But now they were wrongly accused and their good intentions were not rewarded. Ji Yi also said, "We climbed a mountain and found several big book boxes. Because my eldest brother likes to read, we opened the box and took the books back to the cave. Those book boxes were very heavy, and they were obviously from mountains. The gangsters thought it was worthless, so they threw it on the roadside, along with the book boxes and some simple luggage. We didn't ask for it, so they should still be there." The 2 of them spoke in detail and even showed Mr. Guo the scars on their bodies. The villagers also stepped forward one after another, opening their sleeves and coats to reveal the scars on their bodies. Mrs. Kui, old Mrs. Li and others quickly turned away, prompting the village chief to bang the pipe and pot. "Okay, put down your clothes quickly, there are still women." Everyone was so angry that they just let it go, but when they looked at the Guo family, their eyes were full of grievances and anger. Mr. Guo already regretted it. He should not have come today, nor should he be looking for the truth. Because these villagers really don't look like they are lying. 1 or 2 people can act, but it is impossible for such 100 or 10 people to be so consistent. He almost certainly wronged these people. He glared at his nephew fiercely, Feeling somewhat resentful that his nephew kept saying that his family members were wronged and wanted to seek justice. Guoqing felt guilty. This was really beyond his plan. He thought they were just a bunch of mud-legged people who would give in after a few scare words, but he didn't expect them all to be so tough. He gritted his teeth and continued to act rogue. You are all from the same village, so naturally you have agreed on the same tone in advance. No one is stupid. How can you admit that you have killed people and robbed money? Do you think that our Guo family women have lost their honor? Are we not going to ask for the truth? Humph, it's a dream. It's a fact that you took the money my eldest brother and the others brought to build this hot spring valley. Even if you say 1,000 words, you still just rely on your mouth. There is no evidence at all to prove that you didn't kill anyone. Everyone was so angry that they gritted their teeth, but Li Laozi and Lu Biao knew the truth, so they all looked at Mrs. Kui. Mrs. Kui sighed, thinking of the women who were hanged. She couldn't bear it, but she couldn't care less at this time. She turned to Mr. Guo and said, "Mr., when the female relatives of your family wrote suicide notes before they hanged themselves, they have been kept here by me. I was afraid that you would be too sad, so I planned to hide it and ask the villagers not to say more. After all, they are dead, so their misery should no longer be used as a joke in the world. I didn't expect that you act so stupidly, so I don't have to save face for the Guo family." As she spoke, she motioned to sister-in-law Kyung to take out a small box. Sister-in-law Kyung just went back to the next door to get it. Now the box was opened and the blood book was exposed. Mr. Wen picked it up halfway, unfolded it himself, and presented it to Mr. Guo. Mr. Guo recognized the handwriting of his eldest daughter-in-law at a glance. The blood letter said that they encountered bandits, their children and husband were dead, and they had no intention of living. If this blood letter is sent to the family the next day, please thank the villagers for saving their lives, take good care of their youngest son Wen Hao, and remember to take their bones back when you have the opportunity. Mr. Guo's eyes were blurred with tears again. Although he valued the reputation of the Guo family more, how could he forget the filial and caring nature of his daughter-in-law and daughter? When he came to visit friends, he brought his grandson to seek medical treatment. Little did he know that a separation would mean the difference between life and death. Wu, our Guo family teaches and educates people and never does evil things. How come we have to suffer such misfortune? The dying old man cries so miserably that it makes people feel sad to see him. But everyone present had a cold face and was no longer willing to give any sympathy. Guoqing wanted to take the blood book, but Mr. Wen took it back. Waiting for Mr. Guo to gradually stop crying, he asked loudly, "Mr. Guo, do you still suspect us of killing people and robbing wealth?" Mr. Guo heard that they no longer called him Shanjiang, and he knew that he had completely lost face today. Fortunately, he still had some responsibility, so he stood up, knelt on the ground, and kowtowed to everyone to admit his mistake. "Dear benefactors, I have been foolish today, and I have wronged you all by being careless. In a few days, I will definitely come to apologize with a generous gift. Please also understand that I am completely dizzy because my whole family was killed." The villagers all gave way, unwilling to accept the kowtow of an old man, but no one said forgiveness. Mr. Guo looked at Mr. Lu with prayer in his eyes, but Mr. Lu pretended not to see. For a moment, the atmosphere in the room was very awkward. Guoqing did not kneel down, and now glared at Mrs. Kui and Mr. Wen angrily. "I blame them for favoring the villagers and ruining his way to make a fortune." End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 183. Chapter 183. It's a shame. Mr. Ye, who had been silent all this time, now spoke up. "Mr. Guo, please get up first. Mr. Guo quickly got off the donkey and stood up staggeringly. It would be hard for him to let the villagers apologize to him again, and he would bow with shame and leave in despair. But Mr. Ye said loudly, "Who asked you to leave? Aren't you looking for the murderer who killed your family? Now that you know it's not me, the folks, you won't continue to pursue it? Doesn't that mean that the old gentleman is bullying me, the folks? No one wants to support them, and they want to plot the hot spring valley they work so hard to build?" Mr. Guo was embarrassed and quickly shook his head. No, Lord Marquis, I am just confused. It is all a misunderstanding. I have no intentions towards the hot spring valley." "Then sit down," Master Ye scolded him coldly. "I will help you find the real murderer today." Mr. Guo didn't know why, but he suddenly had the same bad premonition in his heart, and subconsciously refused. "No, I won't bother Mr. Ho." Unfortunately, Mr. Ye didn't listen to him at all and directly asked everyone, "When you attacked the bandits, how did the bandits look? Were the refugees taking advantage of the chaos to commit murder?" "No," Li Laosi immediately responded, "those bandits are all young and strong, and they are very skilled. They are definitely not refugees. Their residences are also temporarily found in the mountains. It is not like they have been entrenched there for a long time, but more like outside. Come here." Mr. Ye nodded and asked, "Then in the bandits' den, besides the Guo family and their luggage, did you find any other distressed passers-by, or any property marked by others?" "No," almost half of the villagers echoed this time. "They are also very strange when it comes to this." Mr. Ye didn't say anything, and we didn't think much about it. Now that we think about it carefully, the bandits' den is too clean. There aren't even any other corpses around the yard. It seems that only the Guo family was harmed. Yes, look at what that means. The men of the Guo family were captured and hung directly from the tree. The children were also thrown directly into the cellar. They were not given any food or drink at all, except for the women. Well, by that, bandits are no mercy, no hesitation, just kill the Guo family. Everyone was talking about it, and they all felt strange when talking about that day. Mr. Guo's legs softened and he sat back in the chair, his face as white as paper. Guo Qing, on the other hand, rolled his eyes wildly and hurriedly defended, "Maybe the bandits were wandering elsewhere. My eldest brother and the others were unlucky and accidentally caught up with them. The bandits were killed by you before they could rob others." Saying this, he seemed to have found confidence for himself, and said, "We no longer suspect you of killing people and robbing wealth, but you still want to find someone to throw dirty water on. Isn't it too unkind? I can tell you, uncle is not in good health. Can you afford to apologize for scaring him?" Li Laosi snorted coldly, "Now I know I feel sorry for your uncle. Why didn't you stop me when I tried to persuade him to slander us for killing people? That's it, stop pretending to be a big-tailed wolf. Since we broke it off once, let's break it up completely today." Lu Biatu also scolded loudly, making Guo Qing grit his teeth in anger. Mr. Ye asked again, "Mr. Guo, your Guo family is a famous scholarly family in Kyoto. Naturally, the family property is rich and there are many servants. Since you are moving south, you must bring a lot of carriages, horses, and servants with you, right? But why are there only your son, daughter-in-law, and children in the bandits' den, and not a single servant? Do bandits harm people, so they will specially choose to be the master? Isn't there a maid among the servants who is beautiful and won't let them down? Are the bandits interested?" Mr. Guo's face turned even paler, and his hands began to tremble uncontrollably. Could it be that someone really deliberately harmed his children and grandchildren? Guo Qing also saw a thin layer of sweat on his forehead. He held on and shouted, "Maybe the bandits wanted to capture the master and ask for ransom. They just found out that my uncle was in Jiangnan and they killed him out of disappointment. This is easy to handle." There are so many servants in the Guo family. It's impossible for none of them to reach Jiangnan alive. If you find one and ask a few questions, it will become clear. Li Lao suddenly said, it's impossible to say that there are people near Zindu. If someone stays, let's go out and inquire tomorrow. The Guo family is so famous, it shouldn't be difficult to inquire. Guo Qing was already wiping sweat in a hurry, thinking how to stop this mud-legged guy from asking, but Mr. Wen said something lightly. I wanted to buy a servant a few days ago, and I happened to find an old servant of the Guo family. I was afraid that the old gentleman would get emotional, so I didn't plan to mention it, but I didn't expect that it would come in handy today. Everyone looked at Mr. Wen. Of course the villagers were surprised, but Mr. Lu and his son looked at him with admiration. Mr. Guo has thought too much. Mr. Wen has been prepared for this and even knows a lot of inside information. He has been hiding it just for his sake. But he repaid kindness with hatred and took the initiative to come and break all this. He was simply bringing humiliation to himself. Soon, a servant girl in her 30s was brought up. When she saw Mr. Guo, she threw herself to the ground and burst into tears. Old master, please forgive me, Weavuo, it's not that I abandoned my master and ran away, it was those bandits who only picked up the masters and kidnapped them. When we wanted to come forward, the bandits stabbed people with knives. Guoda, Guo-san, and others were all hacked to death. I'm afraid of death, I don't dare, I can only watch them take away the master, wife, and young master. The woman is quite conscientious. Maybe this matter has been tormenting her for a long time, and now she told her old master everything. They were originally on their way. Although they came out late and missed the group, there were still many refugees and the road was very lively. The bandits seemed to know them. They suddenly rushed out and started killing people, kidnapping people, and stealing money, food, and luggage, and then entered the mountains. They were really helpless and did not dare to pursue them, so they divided the remaining items and ran away. No matter how stupid Mr. Guo is, he now knows that his children and grandchildren have been deliberately murdered. Who is it? Our Guo family focuses on teaching and educating people, and we have no enemies at all. The old man stood up and looked around blankly, like a puppet that had lost its soul. Mr. Wen sighed, took 2 steps forward and said, "Old sir, I have something else here. Maybe you can get the answer after reading it." He glanced at Guo Qing and put his hand into his arms, but before he could take out the thing, Guo Qing couldn't hold on any longer and suddenly scurried out like a rabbit. It's a pity that Li Laozi and Lu Baiatu are both good players. They stretched out their feet almost at the same time, tripping him to the ground and throwing him hard in front of the threshold. Guo Qing had 2 of his front teeth knocked out, his lips and nose were broken, and his face was covered in blood. The villagers reacted and rushed forward. One kicked him, the other pulled his arm. In the blink of an eye, he beat Guo Qing half to death and tied him up. Is this kid harming others? Otherwise, why would he run away? I guess he's right. He's jumping around so happily that I think he has bad intentions. Hurry up and tie him up, don't let him escape. Guo Qing was frightened and shouted for help, "Uncle, help me. I just feel sorry for my brother and the others, and I want to find my enemies. Yes, yes, I also want to go home and put incense on the memorial tablets of my brother and them." Unfortunately, at this time, no one believed him. Mr. Wen took out a few lists and put them in front of Mr. Guo. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 184. Chapter 184. What a hateful thing. Old sir, your nephew previously owed more than 1,000 taels of gambling debt, but he suddenly paid it off a year ago. Moreover, he has been living and drinking outside in the past few months, spending money lavishly. He even met with friends and promiscuous women in private. Speaking of which, he will be the president of the college in the future and inherit the mantle of the Guo family. These are all evidences. There are testimonies from casino clerks and prostitutes. If you don't believe it, just take a look. Mr. Guo slowly shook his head, his face ashen. He wanted to find out the truth behind the tragic death of his children and grandchildren, but unexpectedly, he finally found it on his nephew. He is already old and his grandson is still young. If he is a nephew, who will he rely on in the future? He stood up slowly, looked around, bowed his head deeply, and bowed to everyone. My family is unfortunate. Today I have really troubled everyone to worry about our family. I will take him back to deal with it for the time being, and I will give you an explanation someday. No one said a word, but they didn't stop him either. A flash of joy flashed in Guo Qing's eyes, but before he could speak, Mr. Ye said coldly, "Wait a minute." He gently put down the tea bowl in his hand. There was no anger in his expression, but he was calm and dignified. "Mr. Guo, my fellow villagers saved your Guo family's descendants out of kindness, helped with burials, and helped deliver letters. This can be said to be benevolent and trustworthy. But you Guo Jian took revenge and came to slander me and my fellow villagers for murdering people and robbing wealth, and even coveting the hot spring valley. Now that the conspiracy has been exposed and your nephew is revealed to be the real culprit behind the scenes, you have to take people back to deal with it. Isn't this too natural? Are these villagers going to shout and kill if the culprit is your nephew? Isn't it appropriate for the old gentleman to be so protective?" Mr. Guo's face turned green and white, and he was so ashamed that he wanted to find a crack in the ground to crawl in. "I just thought that I should handle my own affairs. The old man is wrong. Ever since you suspected these folks of murdering people and robbing wealth, this matter is no longer your own business. There are so many people today, but if even a little bit of news spreads, will these folks be blamed for doing a good deed? Will you bear the reputation of killing people and robbing money for the rest of your life?" Mr. Ye was not polite at all, and his words seemed to be filled with ice, which made Mr. Guo feel cold. But all the villagers felt warm in their hearts and could not help but straighten their backs. They are not easily accused, they also have people to back them up. Mr. Guo had no choice but to ask, "Then how should I deal with it according to the Marquis?" "Of course it's business," Mr. Ye nodded to the soldiers at the door, and soon several police officers from the government came in. They bowed their eyebrows and bowed to Mr. Ye. Mr. Ye said, "I have troubled you today. Let me tell you, sir, that business is just a matter of course. I will visit you another day to say thank you." I don't dare. The Marquis fights for the country and it is extremely hard. I don't need to worry about this little thing. I will definitely take what the Marquis says." The head catcher and the policeman saluted again, with a very low posture, but when faced with Guo Qing, they kicked him and dragged him away. Mr. Guo was a little stunned. He didn't expect that this matter would have to go through the government, and that the police would be waiting outside the door. His feet seemed to have nails driven into them, and he could not move a step. He could already foresee that this matter would surely spread. Repaying kindness with enmity and misunderstanding people. These 8 words will be engraved on his forehead forever. Even after many years after his death, people will not be able to avoid the stain when he is mentioned. Mr. Guo rolled his eyes and fainted completely. This time no one was able to pinch him. After all, Mr. Lu couldn't ignore it completely. Seeing Mr. Guo and Guo Qing being brought into the carriage, he said, "Since we have caught up, we have watched it from beginning to end, so let's go to the government office to hear the trial." Mr. Ye nodded slightly, and Mr. Wen said, "Then let me go too. I happen to have all the witnesses and physical evidence here." Li Laozi and Lu Biatu also stepped forward, "Let's go together too. We were the only ones who knew the bandits in the first place." While talking, they also got into the carriage and left. Dr. Zhang put down the tea bowl in his hand, with a hint of schadenfreude on his face, the Guo family is in ruins. This blind old man has fainted over and over again and has injured his heart. Even if he wakes up again this time, he will not be able to get up for the rest of his life. He will eat, drink and defecate. Everyone needs to be taken care of. The villagers sighed when they heard this, but they had no sympathy either. There is only one old man and one young child left in the Guo family, and the old one is even paralyzed. It is indeed pitiful, but there is also something hateful about poor people. Could it be that just because the Guo family is pitiful, they will be unjustly accused of killing people and robbing property, and will be robbed of the hot spring valley? That doesn't make sense. The village chief stood up and shouted to the villagers, "Let's all disperse. Don't delay your work in and outside the village. Patrol when it's time to patrol, and guard the valley when it's time to guard the valley. The valley will welcome guests in the future. Let's have a good life, it's coming too." "I understand, village chief, don't worry." The villagers responded, discussed what had just happened, and left together. Jiyan climbed into Mr. Yes' arms, his eyes full of little stars. When it comes to decisive killing, it still depends on the military prince. If Mr. Ye had not come back, they might have clarified the stigma today and might have revealed Guo Qing's true face, but Mr. Guo and Guo Qing would never have ended up like this. The Li family members were also filled with emotion and expressed their thanks one after another. "Thanks to Mr. Ye, this happened so suddenly today. Yes, if we had known that the Guo family was like this, we shouldn't have sent this letter. Yes, I will keep all the books and not give any of them to their family." Mrs. Li was afraid that young Master Ye would be too tired, so she persuaded him, "Master Ye, would you like to take a nap to sober up? Let Hongying cook some dishes in the evening and let's get together at home. There were so many people just now, and you are taking care of the good news, so you must not eat well." Mr. Ye smiled and said, "Okay, listen to my aunt. I don't think about anything outside. I just think about our food. I've been away for a month. I won't sleep now. I go out for a walk to see what my new home is like." Jiyan immediately hugged his neck and shouted with a smile, "I'll take uncle there. I'll take uncle there. Okay, I'm just taking you out to eat, I just ate too much." Mr. Ye said this, but he was reluctant to walk away from the good news. He still held it in his arms and went out all the way. Jiyan excitedly waved her little chubby hands at her family members, making them all laugh. After a lot of hard work and suffering, everyone finally found a place to stay, got hot springs, and built a villa. It can be said that everyone can wake up from their dreams with a smile and cherish today's stable life. Because money is limited, many conditions are restricted, but everyone is willing to work hard. For example, the roads in the village are made by men, women, old and young, carrying big stones and pounding them down bit by bit, so that they are very smooth to walk on. Every day, villagers carry brooms and sweep again and again. Outside each yard and on the roadside, wild flowers of various colors are planted, and with new fences, the beauty of the mountain village is truly like a picture scroll. Mr. Ye walked slowly, talking to the good news without saying a word. One big and one small, we slowly arrived at the river beach. As we looked around, we saw a lush green area, which made us feel good. At this moment, the sun is about to set, and the orange-red sunset slowly shines down, making the fields even more gorgeous. The village chief, carrying a pipe and pot in his back, walked carefully in the melon fields and picked out the tangled vines. Seeing Mr. Ye coming over, he stepped forward and said with a smile, "Mr. Ye, look how good these melon vines are growing. Where did you find such a precious thing? Did you spend a lot of money?" Jiyan was startled and almost choked on her saliva. She turned around and hugged Mr. Ye's neck. "Hello friends, here is the third update today. I am writing and taking online classes at the same time. My brain is going to split. Please give me a 5-star review and remind me to update it. Hua will definitely work harder. Moi. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, delayed flowering. Chapter 185. Chapter 185, Terrified. Mr. Ye was stunned for a moment, then he came to his senses and smiled. Uncle, I ordered the people below to look for it, so I don't know very well. But these are all good things, and they should be cultivated in the village. This place is close to Kyoto. It will definitely be sold at a good price when the time comes. The village chief uncle smiled and narrowed his eyes. I think so too. This land is looked after by young men during the day, and patrols are also arranged at night. He pointed to a small open space and said, it's been sorted out over there. A shack will be set up in a few days, and Lao Zhao and the others will take turns living there. The melons are growing so well, so we can't let someone's ignorant livestock harm them. Okay, Uncle will make arrangements. If there's anything difficult, if I'm not here, just ask Mr. and Mrs. Yashin. Mr. Ye felt the tension of the little girl in his arms and patted her back gently. Jian breathed a sigh of relief quietly. Oh, I can't bring you any more trouble. The village chief uncle clicked his pipe pot twice and sighed. Now the village has finally settled down. If we work harder in the future and everyone is willing to contribute, we will slowly take root. The two chatted for a few words, and Mr. Ye took the good news and walked towards the valley. Jian secretly took a look at Mr. Ye's profile and saw that he had no intention of asking any more questions, so she became happy and chatted away. Mr. Ye walked slowly, holding a chubby little girl in his arms. She was heavy and pressed her arms. She spoke in a soft voice and shook her head happily from time to time, which made him smile in his eyes. He likes the Li family, not just because the Li family took him in and took good care of him when he was seriously ill, nor is it because this magical little girl took out a small pill and saved his life. But the peace and warmth of the Li family are too attractive to him, a man who has been walking on a knife's edge for half his life. When he was killing enemies outside, when he was injured, or when he was cold or hungry, he would subconsciously think of the Li family courtyard. Thinking of the nagging old lady Li, the hot meals, and this chubby little girl. Jian saw that he was in a daze, his expression of joy gradually turned a little sad. She didn't know what he was thinking, but she felt sad. So she asked Mr. Ye to carry her on his back, and then walked home, one big and one small. As they approached the gate of the courtyard, Jian carefully approached Mr. Ye and whispered in his ear, Uncle, when I grow up, I will provide for you in old age, just like you are filial to my parents. Okay. Okay. Mr. Ye smiled and asked in a low voice, Fu Niu has to work hard to make money. You have more and more people to support. Under the eaves of the corridor, Mrs. Kui was looking around. When she saw them coming back, she greeted them, the Marquis is back and will go out to look for you. There are mosquitoes at night. Fu Niu attracts mosquitoes and always bites her all over. Jian jumped down and ran towards Mrs. Kui with a smile. When she took her into her arms, she acted like a baby and said, Sister, Fu Niu wants to have some snacks. Before Mrs. Kui could agree, old Mrs. Li had already come out of the house. No, eating snacks at night will easily rot your teeth. If you are hungry, ask your mother to steam custard for you. Jian stuck out her tongue and made faces at Grandma, making both Mrs. Kui and Mr. Ye laugh. Soon, Tao Hongying prepared dinner. Li Laozi and Lu Biatu have not returned yet, but with Mr. Wen here, the family is not worried about their food and accommodation. Mr. Ye brought Yeshan and Dongmei, and Mrs. Kui brought sister-in-law Kayang, and they all had dinner at Li's house. So men and women were separated and two tables were set up. The woman was sitting on the Kong in the east room, while Mr. Li, Mr. Ye, and the others, along with Gr and Ji and other brothers, were sitting in the main room. Tao Hongying made 4 dishes, steamed cabbage and pork dumplings, and paired them with golden millet porridge. After a busy day, especially after drinking at noon, eating home-cooked food like this is so heartwarming and comforting. The women chatted, and the men chatted while eating. It was very lively inside and outside the house. Ji-yin sat on her special little stool, which was barely as high as the Kong table. She scooped out the egg custard with a spoon and ate a big steamed dumpling to fill her belly. After dinner, Mrs. Lee stayed with Mr. Ye at home. Although his yard was tidied up, it was not as comfortable as her own. Mr. Ye also readily agreed, so there was a big fuss on the big Kong in the west room that night. Ji, Jian, and Jiaxi all gathered around Ye Gongzi and asked him to tell the story of killing barbarians. Jiaran sat aside with his book in hand. Mr. Ye picked the ones that were less but more dangerous and talked about a few. He heard several boys exclaim from time to time, but their blood was also boiling. Ji wanted to follow Mr. Ye to kill the enemy immediately. Li Lao immediately poured cold water on his son. You and your fourth uncle are the only ones in the family who are better at it. You went to kill the barbarians. You are the only fourth uncle. If anything happens, you won't be able to take care of it. If you wait a few years, the barbarians will be in Jiangbei, and they won't be able to kill them all in a short time. Mr. Ye also nodded. The barbarians have completely occupied Jiangbei. They are riding horses and coming and going like the wind. They can't finish them all in a short while. The court also said that they can recover the rivers and mountains within 10 years, which is already an optimistic plan. Jia Yi did not insist on it. Now that he has just settled in the village, and there is a cornucopia of Hot Spring Valley, everyone is jealous. Even if he followed Mr. Ye, he would still miss his family. There was no talking all night. Mr. Ye slept soundly accompanied by the snoring of the boys from the Li family. Woke up early and ate a bowl of handmade noodles cooked in bone soup, and then took people to Kyoto. The weather is so nice that it's a pity to sit indoors. So Mrs. Lee spread a piece of linoleum in the yard and threw a few futons. The old and young ladies sat together and did needlework. The bedding at home has been taken out, washed, and dried thoroughly, giving it the smell of sunshine. Jiyan lay among the quilts, rolling around and giggling from time to time. Old Mrs. Lee and the others were sewing while they were on guard, and they also laughed along with them. At this time, Li Laosi finally came back. The old girls quickly called him and sat next to him, asking, "What's going on? Has the government found out?" Li Laosi scooped up half a ladle of cold water and drank it. He nodded and said, "Guo Qing has all the witnesses and material evidence, and he can't rely on him. He'll kill them all in just a few strokes." He bribed a group of Jianghu people and deliberately intercepted and killed Guo Qing family. It was agreed in advance that he would share half of the money recovered. But things went so smoothly that the Jianghu people became greedy and divided into two groups. One group came back, and the other group stayed in the north to fight with some bandits and planned to continue. They killed people and stole money, but before they could continue their evil deeds, they encountered us. Everyone was frightened when they heard this, and couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief. Fortunately you were very careful at the time, otherwise you would have suffered a loss. Yes, he is actually a Jianghu man, not a bandit. This Guo Qing is really cruel. He killed his cousin just like that. If a person is greedy, he can do anything. I still have to thank Dr. Zhang without his poison. If most of those people were poisoned to death first, how could the young people in our village beat the Jianghu people? There's also sister-in-law Qian, who's been a big help. Everyone was talking about it, and they were all afraid. Li Laosi looked around, and when he didn't see Dr. Zhang, he asked, "Where is Dr. Zhang? He is so amazing." Mr. Guo woke up on the road, but half of his body could not be used. Mr. Lu helped send him there. I went to the hospital and gave him acupuncture in time, but the doctor said I wouldn't be able to walk anymore. End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 186. Chapter 186, Rushing to Start Business. Of course, otherwise how can we be called a miracle? Dr. Mrs. Lee had been saved twice by divine Dr. Zhang, and she highly respected the old man. But thinking of the Guo family, she asked again, how did Guo Qing get sentenced? Mr. Guo is also paralyzed. What should we do if he has a little grandson? Ji Yan touched the little wooden horse stuffed in her purse, also thinking about Guo Wenhao. Li Laozi responded, Guo Qing has been sentenced to death, and those Jianghu people are also arresting him. The Guo family is not short of money, and Mr. Guo also has a few friends. I think he will not be too bad in the future, and at least he can raise his children, but I don't know how many years Mr. Guo can persist. Everyone sighed, the most pitiable ones are the children. Yes, it's a sin. This Guo Qing is really wicked. Although he has received retribution, he has done a lot of harm to others, and the Guo family will not be able to survive. Old Mrs. Lee suddenly thought of her eldest grandson and became worried again. Something happened to the Guo family and they can no longer open the academy. Where will Jiaren go to study? Mrs. Kui smiled and consoled her, don't worry, aunt. The literary style in Jiangnan is flourishing, and there are many academies. There will be no shortage of places for Jiaren to study. Besides, there is a senior brother, and he will definitely make arrangements for Jiaren. Mrs. Lee was relieved now, but Zhao Yuru mentioned another matter, will those Jianghu people who are being traced come to retaliate against our village? Li Laozi nodded, don't worry, third sister-in-law. Mr. Wen also thought of this and hid us in the village when we were in the government office. Outsiders only know that we happened to meet the murdered Guo family and helped bury them. They don't know to expose Guo Qing. It's us. That's it? Mr. Guo suspected that we were killing people and robbing money, so naturally he couldn't say it openly, but he helped him indirectly. However, our village is safer. Lu Biatu and I went to see the village chief. There are so many things in the village. It's better to be more careful, just in case. Okay, the same goes for our family. The children should be told not to run around and let others take advantage of the situation. Tomorrow, when we receive guests in the valley, we need to be more thoughtful. Everyone discussed it for a few words until they had a clear idea. Early on the next morning, before it got dark, the whole village got up. Clean the courtyard, sweep the roads, boil water for dinner, and then go to the valley to welcome the guests. Of course, it is impossible for more than 100 people to crowd into the valley to work. Most of the people should go to the fields, and those who should go to the orchards should go to the orchards. In the valley, only Li Lao took the lead, bringing with him 12.5-year-olds including Ngxi, plus 7 or 8 neatly dressed women. At 3 o'clock in the morning, the first wave of guests arrived. The couple brought a little girl and 4 slaves with them. 7 people were let in after giving grain as tickets. They booked a small wooden house. It was said to be a small wooden house, but in fact it was quite spacious, with 3 rooms. There is a stone pool for bathing, an inner room for resting, and a living room for guests. Mr. Yan didn't know where he found the craftsmen, and they were extremely skillful. The bathing room has a window, which is covered with a specially woven straw curtain. It is very clear from the inside to the outside, and the water vapor can escape, but not a trace of the inside can be seen from the outside. As long as a maid is posted to guard the window, the hostess inside can take a bath, enjoy the scenery, and watch the excitement without worrying about being exposed. The bathing pool is paved with bluestone, and the water is always flowing, ensuring warmth and cleanliness at all times. As soon as you enter, half of the room is filled with fairy mist, and the pool is full of hot spring water, which makes people want to jump in immediately. Men are not afraid of being exposed and rude, and prefer to be spacious and comfortable, so they took the gauze clothes and went to the waterhole. There are a lot of big stones placed on one side of the pool. When you sit on them, the spring water soaks right up to your chest. It is so relaxing to drink tea, chat, and bask in the sun, surrounded by mountain flowers and ponds. There are several small canoes on the other side, ready for children to play. Because they are tied with ropes, they can only paddle a few feet away, so they are not afraid of running into deep water and causing accidents. While the family of 4 was wandering in the valley, other guests came one after another. Soon, all the small courtyards and wooden houses had guests. Some people bring many slaves, and some people come quietly as a master and a servant. There are also people who have not booked the wooden house or small courtyard, but just want to come in and see what's new. Li Lao only received more than 30 individual customers and closed the gate. It's not that we don't want to harvest food or make money, but if there are too many people, it's easy to cause trouble. Especially the core of the whole valley is bathing. Once something goes wrong, either a woman's reputation will be ruined or a man's reputation will be ruined. Fortunately, the more than 30 individual guests who were let in will come out at dusk. Those who do not stay overnight and have reserved cabins and small courtyards can walk around the valley more comfortably. With more people, there will naturally be more things to do. This cabin needs mosquito coils, that small courtyard needs clear water, and the pond needs tea. Jia and Jiaxi and other naughty boys were promoted from a melon farmer to an errand boy, and they became even busier. Jiaran helped his father keep accounts, and Ji and Lu Yang became the leaders of the naughty boys. The women are responsible for boiling tea and taking care of the female guests. Although it was their first time to work, they were a little hesitant, but fortunately everyone was here to relax and no one was particularly impatient. Tea is served a little late or the wrong things are delivered, but we don't complain. By the pool of water, the men were sitting side by side, taking off their coats. Everyone seemed to have become the same, and there was no distinction between high and low. Share a pot of tea when you are thirsty, and gossip when you are bored. There is a strange closeness between them. Seeing it was noon, someone called the boy, "We don't have a cook or a female family member. Can you provide food here?" Before the young man could speak, someone else responded, "Yes, I want to ask about this too. I was chatting with some friends over tea the day before yesterday. I heard that there is a descendant of the royal chef in Broken Gold Beach, and his craftsmanship is quite good. I'm just looking forward to trying it." "Really, there are still descendants of the royal chef here, then we are in great luck." Everyone was very happy and asked the young man to inquire. "This little guy is Jian." Of course he was happy when someone praised his mother. He almost flew to the hut at the mouth of the valley to report the news. Li Lao had a headache. He thought that the guests would bring their own snacks and food, but it was a bit difficult to make arrangements to suddenly have to eat here. He thought for a moment, then called the village chief and Tao Hongying over. The good news was boring at home, so she asked her mother to go to the valley to watch the fun. Tao Hongying was busy with something, so she carried her daughter behind her back and coaxed her while working. At this time, Li Lao asked Tao Hongying to be a cook, but he was very happy about the good news. Tao Hongying was helpless. She patted her daughter angrily, said something to Mrs. Li, and went to the valley. The village chief is an activist and has already led his people to build an earthen stove, while Li Lao-san drove a mule cart to Xiaowang village to buy ingredients. Fortunately, there was some pork and leftovers from the pig slaughter the day before yesterday, which can be used in emergencies at this time. Tao Hongying made a menu at that time, which was simple to make, delicious and easy to cook. After all, this place is too simple to make too complicated dishes. Minced meat tofu, scrambled eggs with wild leeks, stewed chicken with mushrooms, stir-fried cabbage with fungus, and radish ball soup. Today we have tentatively decided on these 5 dishes. The ingredients are easy to buy and include both meat and vegetables. They can also be paired with 4 set meals. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, delayed flowering. Chapter 187. Chapter 187 Unexpected. A first-class set meal is rice with 4 dishes and 1 soup, which can feed 4 people and is priced at 1 tael of silver. The second-class set meal is rice with 1 meat, 1 vegetable, and 1 soup. It is enough for 2 people and is priced at 500 yen. The sea-level set meal is rice, a meat dish and a complimentary side dish, priced at 100 yen. The ding-ding set meal is 2 steamed rice mixed with japonica rice and millet, plus a vegetable dish and a complimentary side dish, priced at 50 yuan. This price was strictly determined after everyone discussed it. A, B, and C are for guests, and D, and so on are for slaves. The village chief originally thought that vegetables were not valuable and the price should be set lower. But Li Laoer insisted that he would rather give away more side dishes than lower the price. Because once the price is set, winter green vegetables are expensive, but it is difficult to increase the price. On the contrary, it is used as a gift dish, no matter how much it is, it will make the guests happy, and Rujintan can also gain a reputation of being generous and hospitable. Soon, Li Laosan bought the vegetables. Tao Hongying saw that there was no shortage of anything, so she immediately started steaming rice with the women, while the naughty people ran around to count how many set meals were needed. They have been learning arithmetic from Li Laoer intermittently for more than a year, and now they can put it to use. The names of the dishes were quickly announced, the quotations were calculated, and the guests were surprised again. However, some guests disliked the simplicity of the dishes. Li Laoer had already given instructions, so the boys smiled and said, because it is the first day to welcome guests, there will definitely be some shortcomings. I hope the guests will forgive me, and things will get better in the future. And it will be better. Our chef's skills are excellent and your guests will not be disappointed. The guests just said it, but they didn't hold on to it. Even some people who had just met, got together and ordered the first-class set meal when they were happy. But this raises the question, who pays and how much? In short, all kinds of small problems emerged one after another, and finally they were all brought together by Li Laoer. Li Laoer also frowned. He had worked as an accountant before, but he was also an accountant in Cloth Village, so it was not as trivial as this. Jiyan has never managed a hot spring bath, but I have never eaten pork. I have always seen pigs walking. She thought for a moment and then took out the little mare from her purse and waved it at her second uncle. Second uncle, my pony also wants to eat grass. You make a note of it and let it pay for it. Li Laoer was dumbfounded when he heard this. He hugged his niece and kissed her, but suddenly an idea flashed in his mind and his eyes brightened up. He didn't have time to put down his niece, so he called Li Laosan, 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 come here quickly. Li Laosan was helping to light the fire and hurried forward, second brother, is there anything wrong? Yes, yes. You go find some pieces of wood and carve some signs. You don't need any patterns for the time being, just write simple serial numbers. For example, what is the number of a courtyard, or what is the number of an individual guest? Who has extra expenses like this? Show the sign and keep the account, and settle the bill together when you leave. Li Laoer became more and more excited as he talked, when I have free time in the future, it would be best to carve some unique marks on the back of the brand to make it easier to identify. Li Laosan was a man of few words, but he was very smart and liked carpentry. He immediately took the job, went back to the village, called a few young people to help him, and got busy. On the other side, Tao Hongying took the women to fry, and soon the fragrance floated into the valley. The guests climbed ashore one after another, changed their clothes and got ready to eat. After all the set meals were delivered and the guests nodded and praised them, Li Lauer and others felt exhausted. In the afternoon, the guests who had booked the wooden house and the small courtyard went back for a lunch break, while the individual guests played until the sun set and then left. To avoid further confusion, mule carts were even sent out to see off the guests. Because some individual travelers came here by hiring carriages, and there was no carriage when they returned, so they couldn't walk. After doing this, prepare dinner for the overnight guests. Until everything was done and the moon was at its peak, leaving people to guard the valley entrance, Li Lauer and others finally dragged their tired footsteps back to the village. The village chief and most of the villagers are waiting in the Li family yard. Everyone wants to know how the valley's progress is today. Li Lauer drank a bowl of water and then announced with a smile, "Today we collected more than 330 kilograms of grain and more than 60 taels of silver." Everyone looked at each other and was a little confused. This was really beyond their expectations. As soon as they reacted, everyone cheered. "This is too much, more than 300 kilograms of grain per day, enough to feed our whole village for 3 days. There is still more than 60 taels of silver. I will get my money back in 2 months." The village chief also had a smile on his face. He knocked on the table with his pipe pot to signal everyone to be quiet. "Keep your voices down. We won't be afraid of people making fun of us if we spread the word. We haven't seen it in the market. Besides, this is just for collection, not yet calculate the cost and the wages of everyone's work." Li Lauer also nodded and smiled. "It is true that the capital has not been deducted, but the profit is at least 40 taels. Similarly, there are a lot of problems, and they must be solved slowly." The village chief coughed twice and called Jiaran to get a pen and paper. "While everyone is here, the business is open. Let's make a charter tonight." Everyone nodded quickly and moved forward. The village chief nodded to Li Lauer. "Let me say it again, when I die or grow old, the second son in our village will be the village chief. No one will object to this, right?" "No objection, we obey him and listen to him," the villagers almost responded in unison. Li Lauer can write and do calculations. He has been a shopkeeper and is also smooth in his actions. Now he is even starting up business in Hot Spring Valley. No one can replace him. The village chief then said, "My wanderings in and out of the village in the past few days have divided the work of our village into several parts, including the Hot Spring Valley, the river beach, the 2 hills, and the village. We are a team in the village, and no one is divided into mountains. Whose land belongs to whom, and who owns the river beach? They all work together, and they all bear the burden together. But you can't work carelessly. Work more and get more, work less and get less, and no one should take advantage. From now on, our village will divide the work into 3, 6, and 9 grades. For example, those like Hongying and Lauer, who have more work to do, those who are more tired will get more work points even if they are first-class workers. For example, light work such as sweeping the streets and looking at crops will get less work points." Someone couldn't help but ask, "Uncle, how many work points are there for shoveling the ground and weeding? How much does 1 work point cost? Why are you so anxious? Listen to me and tell me slowly." The village chief glared and suppressed the anxious young man. He added, "I just want to tell everyone that there is such a thing. What kind of work and how many work points are specific. When I have some time, the heads of each family will study it with me. I can't let everyone suffer." Li Lauer also heard a few words from the village chief beforehand, and now he said, "What I told the village chief is that in the future, the entire village, including hot springs, mountains, and river banks, will use half of the income to do work. Half of the money will be taken out and divided into dividends according to each family's investment. For example, if the whole village earns 1,000 taels a year, then the 500 taels will be divided according to the dividends, and the remaining 500 taels will happen to be 50,000 taels for the total work points of the whole village. That one work point is 10 cents. In your family, if the child goes to see the melon fields, he will earn 3 cents a day. Everyone finally understood, they all nodded heavily, and they all understood that the Lee family and Mr. Ye were giving in to each other. After all, they have invested the most money. If most of the income is used as dividends, they will get more money. Someone asked, "Village chief, everyone is taking advantage of this matter. Do you want to ask Mr. Ye before making a decision?" End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 188. Chapter 188. You must have a conscience. The village chief waved his hand. "I told Mr. Ye before. He said he is not at home often, and everyone is in and outside Zangluo village. Therefore, he will be happy if everyone takes more." The villagers responded one after another, "Master Ye is really a good man. Master Ye originally joined in because we had no money and wanted to protect our valley from being robbed. Let's not forget Mr. Ye's kindness in the future. He really doesn't ask for anything in return." Okay, the village chief took up the topic again. "As time goes by, if we have this intention, we will always be able to help Mr. Ye. Now that we are talking about business, we have settled down. We will not eat together anymore. The food in the village should be divided quickly, and each family should take care of their own needs. If you want to eat better, work more and get more work points, and your life will be good. If anyone is lazy, does not work, and only relies on dividends, then if you drink the northwest wind, no one will feel sorry for you." Everyone laughed. "Uncle, you are wrong. You will get money if you work. If you don't work hard, how can you be lazy?" Jiyan sat in Mrs. Lee's arms, munching snacks and kicking her little feet happily. "The more you work, the more you will get. If you don't work hard, you will get more. This is really a good way to tie the whole village together and use their strength in one place. At this time, people are not as idiosyncratic as in the previous life, and the collective consciousness is still very strong. Everyone works hard. If anyone is lazy, he will be drowned in saliva. So, I am not afraid of someone fishing in troubled waters. The most important thing is that every person in the village counts. Old and young have all earned their lives together, and their conduct is guaranteed." Everyone was happy and talked a few more words, and they didn't disperse until the second watch. On the second day, while Li Lauer was busy, he counted the grain stored in the village, together with the 300 kilograms collected yesterday. The village chief distributes the money bit by bit according to the number of people in the village. If the family has a lot of strength and labor, they will be given more coarse grains, and if there are many elderly people and children, they will be given more refined grains. In short, no one cared about it, everyone was very humble and harmonious. When the food arrived home and the chimney started to smoke, it was time to separate the rice pot completely. Li Laozi directly carried all the food belonging to Uncle Zhao, the other 6 old men, and Dr. Zhang back to his home. Uncle Zhao and the others then chased after him, refusing to eat with the Li family anymore. Originally, in Qingshui village, their fields were cultivated by the Li family, so they ate with the Li family, which was a burden to the Li family, but it also paid off in autumn. Nowadays, wages are paid according to work points in the village. The 6 old guys are disabled, so their work must be the lightest, and their work points are also the least. There was also the money invested from the other side of the valley. Together they just bought 1 share. They probably wouldn't have much money during the Chinese New Year. In this way, if you follow the Li family for food and clothing, you will be taking advantage of the Li family. But Mrs. Li asked a few people to sit down and made it clear. "Old brothers, this matter was discussed together by the children at home last night. Although we have different surnames, you helped us a lot when we settled in Qingshui village. Even when we fled all the way here, you did your best. Protect our family. You can't say that when there is a benefit, you rush forward. Now that there is no benefit, you are left to drag your hands and feet to earn food. There is no such unscrupulous person. Yes, Uncle Zhao, the situation on the road is special. You can eat in the cave where you live. It's been a few months of sharing the rice. Now that you are stable, you should come back quickly. Li Lao-san also tried to persuade. Li Lao-si also said, the village chief's aunt is not in good health, and the Lu family's sister-in-law next door is working in the valley. I'm afraid she won't be able to take care of her. You don't know how to cook. Even Jiaxi and Jian shouted, Grandpa Zhao, the rice is burnt and it doesn't taste good. Everyone couldn't help but laugh. Old Zhao rubbed his hands and hesitated. However, Divine Dr. Zhang patted him on the shoulder and shouted, don't be pretentious, Li family Renai, you are lucky to meet the Li family. You just carry on well. This is also the Li family's good deeds and good deeds. There will definitely be good rewards in the future. These words touched the heart of Mrsli. She hugged her little granddaughter and smiled like a flower. Being filial is a great good deed. Let the old brothers accumulate more merit for their children. Lao Zhao and others looked at each other and stopped refusing, but still said, from now on, whenever the village distributes money or food, our wages and the dividends at the end of the year will all go to your family. You can't refuse it? If no, we don't have the shame to be here. Okay, it's settled. Mrs. clapped her hands happily. Let's have a reunion dinner tonight, and then let the children take a look at your yard. If there is anything missing, add more when it's time. We are older. I don't know how many more years there are, but I will live more comfortably as long as I am alive. At this point, the matter is settled. Uncle Zhao and the others always felt that they had failed the Li family, so they went to the village chief for advice, and the village chief gave them reassurance. I have calculated secretly in private, your wages this year will definitely be enough for food and clothing, and you won't lose anything to the Li family. Maybe in 2 years, the fruits on the mountain will be sold, the income from the hot springs will be stable, and you can make more in a year. That's good, that's good. Uncle Zhao and the others were completely relieved. They gathered with the Li family for dinner in the evening. Not only were they full, but they also drank a bowl of wine and went back to sleep with their faces flushed. You don't need to worry too much about the fruit trees on the mountain and the riverbank, as long as you are willing to work hard to take care of them. The most recent focus of the village is the hot spring valley. As the reputation spread, more and more customers came to visit. But Li Lao withstood the pressure and still allowed only 30 or 40 individual guests to enter every day, in addition to the guests who booked the wooden house and the small courtyard, so as to avoid chaos caused by too many people. If a guest comes in for fun and is blocked at the door, he will naturally be unhappy. He would give the guests reservation wooden signs and register them in the book, so that the guests could come in smoothly next time. After a few days, this rule was established, and gradually there were individual tourists who came first to get the lottery tickets. Whenever guests come in, 3 types of wooden signs will be distributed according to the designated courtyard, wooden house, and individual guest. The wooden signs are engraved with different patterns and serial numbers. Whether it's ordering food or tea, whenever there is additional expense, the boys will take out the booklet they carry with them and record it with Mitaishi. When checking out, the accounts should be clear and the settlement should be quick. Tao Hongying has completely become the master chef of the valley's logistics. 3 simple thatched huts were built at the entrance of the valley. The small wooden hut next to the entrance is quite neat. The daily menu has added a lot of new dishes, and it even accepts banquets and individual dishes. Behind the thatched shed, there are cages for raising chickens and pottery tanks for raising fish. Every morning, I go to Zhuang to buy pork belly, bone sticks, and tofu. The old men and women in the village will also bring fresh wild vegetables dug from the mountains for the guests to eat. Tao Hongying's craftsmanship is inherently good, and the guests feel particularly comfortable eating while enjoying the mountain flowers and hot springs, and the food is undeniably delicious. So, half a month later, Sujintan Hot Spring Valley, which is famous for its hot springs and beautiful scenery, actually has food, which is beyond everyone's expectation. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 189. Chapter 189 Division of Labor and Cooperation. There is another thing that surprised everyone, which is about the old miracle Dr. Zhang. The old man is very lively. He lives with Uncle Zhao and the other 6 on weekdays. The Li family takes good care of his food and clothing. He is willing to go for a walk in the valley when he has nothing to do. Occasionally, the old man would take a bath with his guests and cheerfully talk about the benefits of frequent hot spring baths, which was also a secret way of boosting business for his family. The guests knew he was a doctor, but no one took him seriously. As a result, there were more than a dozen men sitting in the pond that day, taking a bath, drinking tea, and bragging. It was a lively time. Suddenly there was a fat man with big ears. His hands and feet were twitching and his teeth were clenched. He slipped directly into the pool and bubbles appeared. Everyone was startled and started screaming again and again, "Come quickly, help people, help people." It happened that Dr. Zhang was half soaked in the hot spring with a cloth on his forehead. Hearing the sound, he pulled off the cloth, stepped forward to pick up the man, and shouted to everyone, "What are you shouting for? Hurry up and help." Everyone rushed to help and carried the person ashore. Jia and Jiaxi ran forward and asked, "Grandpa, the miracle doctor, what should I do? I have a needle pack in my clothes, bring it here." Dr. Zhang then pulled a wooden stick, opened the man's mouth and went in. If he pressed the man's belly again, some pool of water would be vomited out, but his hands and feet were still clenched tightly. Some people said, "Look at this problem, it looks like epilepsy. This disease is difficult to cure and can even kill people." Hearing that someone was about to die, a large crowd of people gathered nearby and made a big move out of the way. Divine Dr. Zhang sneered disdainfully, "Look at you, how could a man with epilepsy be so frightened into being so virtuous?" After saying that, he took the needle pack handed to him and inserted a dozen or so needles. It is really miraculous, but within a few breaths, the sick man loosened his arms and legs, and it was obvious that he felt much lighter. Everyone stared in shock. After another cup of tea, the wooden stick in the man's mouth fell and he woke up. He looked at everyone blankly. When he realized that he was ill, he struggled to sit up. The boy who came with him had gone back to get some snacks, but now he was so scared that he crawled forward and stepped forward to support his master, crying, "Oh, sir, let's go home right now." The man waved his hands, moved his arms and legs, and then knelt down directly in front of Divine Dr. Zhang. "Old man, you saved me. Thank you for saving my life." Divine Dr. Zhang slowly put away the silver needle, without even looking at him, and said, "Don't you know what's wrong with you? Have you drank too much, eaten greasy, or been very tired recently?" Without waiting for the man to respond, Xiao Yan nodded desperately, "Our master drank in the morning, ate a hoof, and then came here." Magic Dr. Zhang rolled his eyes, "If you don't want to live a long life, just eat like this in the future. This time you meet me, you can take it easy and prepare for the funeral next time." The man was sweating profusely. He had not been sick for a year or two, so he forgot about his taboos. He almost died today. "Miracle doctor, miraculous doctor, I will pay attention next time and never do this again. Please give me a prescription and save me. I still have an 80-year-old mother and 2 unmarried sons at home." The servant also knelt down and begged together, his eyes full of hope. To be able to make a slave so dedicated shows that this man is usually a good person. Dr. Zhang thought for a while and then said, "You have a rest first and eat something light for lunch. I will write you a prescription. You can take it for 5 days and then come back to change the prescription. Control your mouth from now on and don't be overjoyed or sad. Then you should be fine." The man immediately responded and even sent the boy to go to the valley entrance to continue to pay the deposit. He would not return home and would live in the valley for 5 days. But the wooden houses and yards in the valley were all booked, and he could no longer live there. In desperation, he moved to the nearest Dawaisha village. 5 days later, he got a new prescription, left a generous consultation fee, and went home. There were some lively guests, so people were specially sent to check on him. Those who were familiar with the man also went to his house to inquire. There is no need for the man to say anything, just looking at his rosy face, he is much better than before. As a result, the reputation of Sujintan as a miraculous doctor spread like wildfire. The wealthy family even set up a courtyard in the valley and stayed there for 5 or 6 days, just for the help of divine Dr. Zhang to check their pulse. Ordinary guests also feel at ease. After all, there is a miracle doctor here. If there is an accident here, there is no need to worry about no one to save him. Shenji Zhang walks around every day and does not work. He only uses a few needles to make broken gold beach even more popular. A craftsman will never have to worry about eating wherever he goes. This sentence is simply tailor-made for the old man. Wealthy people are generous and give generous medical fees. Occasionally, they can even double the medical fee by prescribing medicine. The villagers are envious and happy, and would rather have their children share Zhang's medical skills, even if they are just superficial. On the way over the mountains to the south of the Yangtze River, there were young men who helped the old man, collecting herbs and boiling them. Now they don't have apprenticeships, but they can still be regarded as the old man's medicine boys. Many times, the old man would walk in front, followed by a few little medicine boys. Not to mention how majestic he was, he made everyone in the village laugh. 360 lines of work, any line of work is enough to support the family. The villagers have no intention of requiring their children to study. After all, not every child is as talented and hard-working as Jiren. As long as the child can write and do arithmetic, learn a skill and be useful to the village, then he will be fine in the future. In this way, after half a month of excitement, the whole village has finally straightened out its work in various places, and everyone has become familiar with their own work. This night, the village chief and Li Laoer announced the work points for all the work. The village chief and Li Laoer are the backbone of everyone and receive 10 full work points. Tao Hongying is in charge of the logistics in the Hot Spring Valley, Li Laosi is in charge of the management of the 2 hills, and Lu Biatu is in charge of the valley and the village, as well as all the patrol and night guards on the river beach. All 3 of them get 9 work points. All the young men and women in the remaining villages who do labor work will receive 8 work points. If you need to help with patrolling at night, additional work points can be added. The women and boys who work in the valley's logistics department are given 6 work points. Among them, Jie Huan has learned most of the cooking skills and has been in charge of the meal, so he was given an extra work point. The remaining people patrolling and watching the night, whether they are old people like Uncle Zhao or the young men who have spared their time, have 5 work points. The specific number of people to use is determined by Lu Biatu. Finally, the little children who were left unattended in the village were also gathered together, and were divided into 2 elderly people to take care of them. There were also those who cleaned the streets in the village and those who cleaned up debris in the valley. These were divided into 4 work points. Of course, if something happens and it is necessary to temporarily transfer people or change jobs, the village chief and Li Laoer will determine the work points. Everywhere, the work points of those who work every day are recorded by team captains, and you have to ask for leave from them. Making mistakes or being disobedient will also result in work points being deducted. If it gets serious, the whole village will hold a meeting to expel people. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 190. Chapter 190 Unexpected Visitor. After setting the rules in this way, everyone in the new village has a clearer understanding of what they are busy with every day. The entire new village is like a machine, operating efficiently. Except for a little kid like Jiyan, there is no one idle in the village. Even Mrs. Lee would occasionally go to the melon fields to help pull weeds and pinch tips with good news on her back, earning 5 work points. Of course, everyone in the Lee family strongly opposed it. I'm afraid of tiring the old lady, and I'm also afraid of getting good news. Jiyan is greedy and has made herself fat. She is cute and white, but who knew she is so insensitive to the sun? She only went to the fields with this grandma for one day. When she came back, half of her face was visibly darker. From the front, one side was white and the other was black, making her a veritable hermaphrodite. Everyone in the family couldn't help laughing when they saw her. Jiyan was so angry that she stuck her out, buried her head in the quilt, and refused to go out. As a result, the quilt was suddenly lifted, and she was also held in his arms. Jiyan was a little angry, but when she looked up, she found Mr. Ye coming. She cried in grievance and hugged Mr. Ye's neck without letting go. "You, uncle, is Funiu an ugly child? Daddy laughs at me, and so does my brother." Mr. Ye actually couldn't help but want to laugh. The fat little girl now has a black and white face. No matter how you look at it, it's so funny. But the little girl was crying, and he couldn't bear it, so he quickly coaxed her, "Funiu is not ugly. It was caused by the sun, just cover her up at home for a few days and it will be fine." "Really?" Jiyan sobbed, and felt a little blushing for being so coquettish. After all, she was an old cucumber at heart, but looking at her short arms and legs, she was just a child, and she was going to get willful and angry. Wow, Funiu is angry. Funiu is not an ugly child. Okay, Funiu, don't cry, don't cry." Mr. Ye panicked and quickly opened the box he brought. "Let's see what good things uncle has brought you." The box contained a pair of gold bracelets, with 2 small hollow bells hanging from the bottom, which were particularly delicate and beautiful. Mr. Ye put it into Jiyan's hand. The heavy gold bracelet made Jiyan smile immediately. The 2 small bracelets are both solid, and with the gold bell, there are enough more than 3 taels, which is more than 30 taels of silver. Luxury, too luxurious, but she likes it. So, her tears immediately found another outlet and flowed out from the corner of her mouth. Mr. Ye saw that the fat girl's eyelashes were still wet, but her eyes were sparkling and her saliva was dripping. She looked like a money-crazy girl. He couldn't help it anymore and laughed out loud. Jiyan wiped her saliva and grabbed the bracelet tightly. She didn't care about being laughed at and went to the ground to find her grandma. Mrs. Lee was killing a chicken. When she heard her granddaughter crying, she ran into the house. She happened to bump into her and Jiyan was knocked to the ground. Mrs. Lee quickly picked up her granddaughter. "Little ancestor, why are you crying and laughing at the same time? This little girl is really going to become a sperm. If you get a little tan, why don't your family members laugh? Tomorrow just let your father and the others go tanning and tan with you, okay?" Jiyan kissed her grandma hard, and excitedly showed off to her, "Milk, milk, this is a treasure given by uncle." Mrs. Lee took one look and was so shocked that she quickly pulled Mr. Ye away, who came out after him. "Why are you giving Funiu her jewelry again? She is a child, what does she know about beauty and ugliness? It is still such a precious thing. You can keep this gold, or buy some good jewelry, and use it to marry a wife in the future." Mr. Ye listened with a smile and then said, "For killing the barbarians earlier, the emperor rewarded you with a lot of gold and silver, so he took out a piece of gold and gave Funiu a small toy. Don't worry, aunt, I don't lack these. Mrs. Li was relieved now, but she was even more grateful. This is a reward from the emperor. It is imbued with dragon energy. It will definitely be good for your granddaughter to wear it. Well, Aunt will take it for Funiur, just this time, it won't happen in the future. Okay, I understand. Auntie. Mr. Ye accepted the good news and sat down to watch the old lady tidy up the chickens. Soon everyone in the family came back, and Jiyan ran around the yard with the new bracelet. Wherever he ran, the bells rang. Everyone in the family knew that the little girl had been angry earlier, so they praised her in various ways and made her very proud of the good news. Originally I thought Mr. Ye could stay for one night, but after lunch, he was about to set off. The Li family was reluctant and asked, "Are you going to Jiangbei this time to kill the barbarians?" Mr. Ye shook his head, "No, this time we are stationed at the dock. I took the initiative to ask for the errand. If there are people like you who come through the mountains, I can respond in time." Yes, yes, this is great. Old Mrs. Li was still frightened when she thought of the tragic incident. At that time, money was collected at every city gate. There must have been many people like them who had no choice but to enter the forest. Although the woods are full of dangers due to wolves, tigers, and leopards, there must be many who have successfully crossed through. They cannot be allowed to be hunted down by barbarians when they see the light of day. Then you go quickly and stay close to each other. In a few days, I will ask the fourth child to bring you food. Mr. Ye waved his hand and rode away with his soldiers. He thought the old lady was just talking. After all, he was busy at home and might not have time to prepare anything for him. But Mrs. Li was serious and took her daughters-in-law to make noodles that night, planning to make noodles. When Jiyan heard this name, he thought it was the thin machine noodles in his previous life, but after enduring the sleepiness and looking at it for a long time, he became more and more impressed by the meticulous thought and craftsmanship of his grandma and me. Kneading the noodles, resting the noodles, rolling the noodles once, rolling the threads twice, and each noodle is all done by hand. It is definitely a big project. At noon the next day, the first batch of noodles were hung in the yard, slowly fluttering in the wind, like door curtains. The wind in early summer is warm and gentle, and the sun is doing its job. In a day's work, all the noodles are dry by night. Pick them off and cut them into appropriate lengths with a knife, then place them in a ventilated place to dry overnight until they are completely dry. Jiyan took a small stick and tied a piece of red silk to help drive away birds and flies. She also forgot about her little face, so she made noodles and she became a little black charcoal. For this reason, the old lady specially ordered a bowl of braised noodles to make up for her little granddaughter's wounded love for beauty. The days are always busy and beautiful. Whenever the Li family has free time, they think about food. They save 50 kilograms of noodles and boil a jar of meat sauce. Li Lao-san is going to set up an oven in the corner of the courtyard again. Tao Hongying is going to bake some dried vegetable and meat cakes and send them to Mr. Ye. They won't be afraid of spoiling after a month. After dinner, Jia and Jia 11 played hide and seek in the yard with their sister. Jia Ren chatted with grandma, Li Laosi and Ji Yi helped Li Lao-san, and Tao Hongying and Zhao Yura cleaned the kitchen. Li Laoer mentioned that during the day, some guests scolded the young man, and said, "I will go to the village chief and tell him. If there are such guests in the future, I will kick them out." Yes, that's how it should be. If the children in our village are right, they can't be bullied. At most, we won't earn this money. Old Mrs. Li loved her children the most. She couldn't bear to hear the children being wronged, so she drove her son away and said, "Go quickly and come back early to go to bed." "I know," Mother Li Laoer stood up and opened the courtyard door to go out. As soon as he opened the door, he saw Lu Biao and others surrounding a middle-aged woman. Bouncer Lu stepped forward and said, "Second brother, we patrolled and caught a person sneaking around the entrance to the village. She said she was looking for Li Zhenzhen's home." I heard that the name sounded very similar to yours, so I brought her here. Li Lauer kicked the door in and out, and was nailed to the spot. It took him a while to find his voice and asked, "Who did she say she was looking for?" Li Zhensheng. Jian Jiaxi held her hands and carried her sister on the sedan. She happened to walk to the door. When she heard this, she turned around and shouted, "Mistress, is there anyone named Li Zhensheng in our family?" The sewing basket in the old lady's hand fell down with a clang, and the needlework ends were scattered all over the floor. Today's third update is here. I got up at 6 o'clock to write it. Isn't it great? Hee, I'm asking for a 5-star review. Please urge me to update, my dears, please cheer for Huahua. End of this chapter.